Cool. Hey guys. Apparently I did it again, where I started broadcasting on the wrong post. So it looks like there are a handful of you guys already here. Let's see. We got Charles, let's effing go. Where are we going? This would be better than Mank. I don't know what Mank is. Tiger energy. Tiger blood. Anyway, how are you guys all doing today? I'm having this weird day where I wasn't sure. This is perhaps the best thing anyone's ever posted on one of my web chats. How's everything sound to you guys? I'm playing the telly through. Hey Brian. My little pedal board today. All you're really hearing is the El Capistan and the J Rocket 45 caliber. Hey Larry. So not bad for a telly. Go for the clean sound. Were you guys able to hear the backing track okay? So, I literally just put out a lesson this afternoon about time and rhythm, which is what we were kind of doing last week. I can't remember if it was the Wednesday or the Saturday morning one. If you guys have questions about that, feel free to ask. Thanks about the sound levels. What I thought I would do though is maybe because most of you guys are people I know. And you guys already play or have taken lessons with me, I thought it might be kind of fun to take a look at something we're all familiar with, some Chuck Berry, and kind of pull it apart a little bit. So what I've got here, so I can do this correctly. One of these should be. One of these days, I'll do this well. So we got a little bit of Johnny Be Good. And I thought what might be kind of cool is because it's like one of those things that I learned a long time ago and never played it right. And then you got some tablature, like this kind of like actual notation. And then went back and re-listened and went, wow, I didn't understand that song at all. One of the things that I was doing, like in the introduction, I'm sure you guys... Y'all are familiar, I'm assuming, with Johnny Be Good. Let's find here. So the beginning. Right, that beginning part, because you got these groups of three. I always, and when I was much younger, I thought they were triplets. Right, which doesn't really, because what we have here, and I'll mark this up a little bit. Right. Is that we've got this superimposition of threes over two essentially, right? And what I mean by that is every one of these starts with the slide, right? So you have three groups of three, but the reality is that each one of these beats, like here's the downbeat of 1. Downbeat of 2, downbeat of 3, downbeat of 4, downbeat of 1. And part of what makes this so interesting to me is the fact that even though like the song itself is like went down in Louisiana, right? It's really straightforward. You have this thing where he's basically making syncopation happen by playing polyrhythms, by playing things that don't line up with the downbeats or with the strong beats, right? So you have the pickup phrase. This is one of those things that like I've seen a million cover bands play this wrong. You're thinking 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and 4 and 1, right? So you got to make sure that you're and 4 and. Typically, the original recording, which we won't listen to on this, there's like a floor tom and a kick drum or something. There's like a boom on the beginning of the first measure, and the band doesn't really come in until the fifth measure, right? So it's like a 12-bar blues, but you know, the first phrase from our 3 phrase lessons, there's no rhythm section. It's just this guitar lick, and this is kind of the famous part of it. All right, but it's got this propulsive energy that actually, to me, is much more exciting because he's actually doing this thing where there's the 3s over the 2s. Right, so you've got this and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and the accent pattern not being on every beat makes it work really nicely. I really like that. So that's kind of the first bit, and you're going to kind of see there's a lot of this 3/2 on this, and that's kind of what makes this exciting. And think about it, this is 1955, I think, maybe. The music has a copyright of 58, but for some reason I was thinking this was much earlier. This says 58. I was always under the assumption it came out much earlier, like 54 or 55. But I could and probably am wrong. All right, so you've got that first bar, right, with all of the energy, all of the tiger energy. And then you've got this next phrase here. Right, and this next phrase, all right, in reality, even though these are straight eighth notes all the way through here, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note, eighth note, right, you've got one phrase there, all right, and then this next phrase, we'll block it off with the green here, really starts there. All right, and then that is syncopated. Okay, so I had a question. All right, what does 3/2 mean? And essentially, what we're talking about is this idea where, say, we're playing 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So basically every beat is divided in 2. Hey Toby, thank you for the 1955. So I was pretty right. So each of these patterns rhythmically is divided into 2, or every beat, 1 and, or 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, right? But the accent pattern rhythmically, what's going on is 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and so on. So what happens here is that, and this is almost like Coldplay. You know, Coldplay does the ba da 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 da, like on every song, right? That's 3 plus 3 plus 2. All right, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 ba da da da. Every Coldplay song that I know of has this this ridiculous rhythm, right? Right, and really we're in 4/4 time, but that's kind of the beat pattern, or the accent pattern, is on the first of those 3, and the first of those 2, and then all of that added up together equals 8. It's the new math. We're doing Common Core math for guitar players, right? In this case, you've got this thing where the beat happens 1 2 3 4 and so on, but where you're accenting it isn't on those spots. You're accenting on the first group of every pattern of 3 notes. So if you notice, all right, you have an accent on 1, and on the and to 2, and then downbeat to 4. If you continue this out mathematically, every other group of 3 starts on the and, or the second half of a beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, right? And it took how many bars for it to kind of come back to the 1, right? So that you get this rolling feeling, right? It's like a polyrhythm, I guess. Does that make sense? But because of that, you know, that gives us the syncopated feeling. Now, syncopation, you know, as far as I think about it, syncopation is about the idea that you're playing sometimes on accented parts of a measure, but more often than not on unaccented parts. So instead of going 1 2 3 4, you maybe go 1 2 and 3 4 1 and 2 3, all right? And that is actually this rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, right? If I put the metronome on, let's get a metronome going here. Let's speed up a little bit. 1, 2, and 3. So on the beats, not do this 3/2 thing. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and back. That's syncopation, right? And that's part of what's going on here with the Chuck Berry thing. That's what I like about this. Okay, so let me ask you all. Okay, I actually got a question here. Let's see this. What does Steve say? Benny and the Jets. Yeah, I mean, almost all rock music has syncopation. I'll be honest with you. If there's no syncopation, it's polka music or it's country music. You really a lot of what makes rock and roll happen is syncopation. I think you've got like a standard drum beat, right? Instead of just going, or I'm accenting 2 and 4 maybe, or it could be like a Ramones tune. Right, that's or Black Sabbath or whatever. That's pretty straightforward, right? But yes, I mean that's not syncopated because you're not like combining the strong and the weak parts of the beat. But all that stuff that you're talking about, and I'm not super familiar with early Elton John. I have to admit that. Benny and the Jets. To me, that feels like there's going to be syncopation in there. But honestly, I'm super not familiar with that. So, okay. So my 3-minute explanation of syncopation and 3/2, right? And when you have one accented rhythm pattern over a different one, that's one thing that we can call a polyrhythm. All right. So now you've got the first phrase. The second phrase also starts on the and of 1. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I played that a second ago. If that started on beat 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? That would actually have a completely different feel, right? So if I played this in my really, really dumbed down old school high school version, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, right? That's with triplets or 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 E-N. That would, those are all the ways that I probably played this song wrong on gigs, right? But knowing where the downbeat is, and this kind of goes back to the video lesson I put out today and the conversations we've had in previous lessons, you have to know where that beat is, all right, and where the pulse is and where the subdivision within the pulse is in order for any of this stuff to make sense. Right, and this is like one of those songs. A lot of people will learn this and play this in their first bands. Like, oh, it's easy. It's Johnny B. Good. And in some ways it is, but the nuances, the things that actually make this cool are actually a lot harder than you would think. Oh, I'm missing some comments down here. Let me see what we got. Steve, I'm old. Me too. I have to say me too. I'm marking nice. Okay, so that's that part. And then we get to where the last bar of those first 4 bars is, and that is, which is super not syncopated. It's super straight, all right? So you've got this thing where it's like, I'm thinking too much. 2, 3. Right. So those 2 bars right there are pretty straightforward. Right. I love that. This I've always been, I don't want to say offended by how simple it is, but it's really simple. It's just a power chord, like you're playing a B flat power chord. Right. And then this next part that he plays, he's just sliding into the 3rd and the 5th of the B flat chord. So with Chuck, you're going to find that you've got these ideas that are partially like T-Bone Walker, which you're going to see here in a second. That's very T-Bone Walker. And sometimes, you know, he's actually just hitting chord tones like he's playing country guitar. And it's pretty cool. All right, and that's what this is. So he's sliding. That's very unsyncopated, right? He's basically taking that third and fifth. The melody note is he's playing the sixth of the chord, which is on the 8th fret, 2nd string. Oops, I don't have my music up for you guys. That's what we're looking at. If I start talking and I don't have the music up, or I don't have the video the same place that I am, this tab is, you can probably get it on musicnotes.com. This is actually, I think, from a guitar magazine. I don't know. I hope I don't get in trouble for doing this sort of thing. Let me, I'll post the link to an appropriate recorded versions with tabs. So it's probably going to be this one here. Yes. Okay, so I'm just going to put the link in the box. These things are usually $5 or $6. It's totally worth it. I'm going to continue my my screed against using Ultimate Guitar or free tablatures. You should buy them. Partially because the artist, if the artist is still alive, should get your money. And second of all, because you don't want to waste time playing wrong music. So there's that. Okay. So when it gets into where the groove starts, all right, and the groove is a typical, you know, like blues, boogie, like that sort of thing. And the drums, everything's kind of straight, except for, I'm trying to remember, either the drums or the bass plays it swing while the other one plays it straight, which is part of the tension in this that makes it kind of interesting. There's a lot of things where, like, because this wasn't produced like in the fashion or the way that we would do it today, it was literally just guys in a room playing. There are things that a modern producer would say is incorrect and get them to fix, and that's part of what makes this stuff so cool. That's part of the tension and the excitement, to me at least. So you always want to listen to the rhythm section on this when you finally get a chance to listen to it. All right, so now we've got this part once the band starts and they're playing, like the rhythm part is real straightforward. One of those really misunderstood licks too. And what we have, once again, if we divide this up rhythmically, he's playing the bend on 1 and then the and of 2 and then the downbeat of 4. Does this sound like something? 1 and of 2, downbeat of 4. Right now, if we just divide this up into eighth notes, so the quarter note gets 2 eighth notes. 1. Whoops. Hang a second here. What happened to my app here? There we go. Sorry. So if we break this down into subdivisions, this is kind of the coin of the realm here, is everything gets subdivided right now because those are the lessons. Right? We have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Right? And then if we do it in terms of just counting eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2. Then we come over here. This is going to be 3, 1, 2, and then 1. And then this is basically where it ends, right? Because it's the pattern changes. So we've got all right. That's the end of the phrase, and then it repeats for the next 2 bars, I guess. All right, and so you've got the syncopation idea here, where he's basically playing this pattern of 3/2 again, and that's where those bends are. Most people, when they play this song and they don't really know how to count it, they're just like, right. But what would actually make it groove. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and repeat. Right, and then the last phrase is kind of the next thing that actually releases all of the tension, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I want to stop there for a second. Anybody have any questions to that point? Do you guys ever take something simple that you play and try and analyze it like this? Oh, my jaws. Remember 2 weeks ago when the side of my face was all puffed up? I was like a chipmunk. I had the messed up tooth. I've got, I had the surgery to fix that yesterday. And now I'm not very swollen. I'm not much pain, but my jaw is just like all jacked up. So I apologize. It's like TMJ kind of inhale. Anyway, one of the things that I get from having to teach this stuff is I'm always having to break it down to figure out a way of teaching it that makes sense to a beginner. I have to redefine what a song like this is in order to communicate it. And what usually ends up happening is that when I do that, I end up discovering something about it that wasn't apparent to myself at some other point. Right? And that's one of the joys of teaching, but also I've learned that that's one of the things that I have to do when I practice, just kind of sit down and, especially if it's something where I'm having to learn someone else's song for a gig, or I'm trying to internalize some other lick or some other idea. Part of the process of learning or transcribing, to me, is the breaking down, the deconstruction of something and getting to the core of the idea and figuring out how I can manipulate it. So he says, just going to take some real practice to count while playing. Well, that's part of it. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of things I gave up on because I got frustrated with it, and I really wish that I had followed through when I was younger. And one of them is basically just kind of working through ideas like this and making sure that I could count and define what they were, you know, in order to execute it. You know, I'm much older now, and I'm able to. Had I done this at a younger age, I would have been a better faster. So to get it internalized, so I can get within me for the oddball stuff. Struggle with counting triplets, for example. So keep an eye on the videos on the channel, like today's video. We just start with the idea of feeling subdivisions in that lesson. But I'm going to have probably a series of lessons on playing rhythms, mostly rhythm guitar, like strumming. So there's not going to be as much triplets. But the idea of accountability for everything that you play is going to be a big part of what we do, and it's going to build this skill set that you're struggling with, I think. I think that's going to be something that's going to come up. And then naturally Charles. Yeah, that happens. All right. So let's talk about what I think is probably my favorite bit of this song, which is the last 4 bars. And this is because it's really like a Charlie Christian like T-Bone Walker sort of thing. You know what, Brian? This is something we all really need to work on. I've done this a long time. I'm pretty decent at it, but there's times where like I'll play a gig with someone who is sometimes there's a friend of mine named Ken Farrick, and he was in the President's Own Marine Corps band. He's a saxophone player. He's Dr. Ken Farrick, Doctor of Music. Plays at the Hollywood Bowl as a featured solo. I mean, he's an incredible musician. And we'll play like Mike Stern stuff or really sophisticated fusion stuff. And I'm just barely hanging on. And he's just like, blah, 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 blah. And he just, his whole life has been spent being very detail oriented on this stuff. While I've been like all, and I feel your pain on that. It's having to go back and kind of relearn some of these things. and making sure I can do it while I'm playing that kind of music has been kind of a, we'll say, an eye opener for me. All right, so the last lick here in this. All right, that's this whole line right here. All right, and let's bring the guitar back for a second. All right, so the first part, you're gonna find that, you know, even though he's playing a B-flat blues, and we think about this sort of music as like, hey, it's gonna be pentatonic, he's actually playing all kind of, basically he's playing a Mixolydian mode. Right? He's got notes like he's banging the 4th to the 5th. Here's the root, minor 7, 6, 5, 9, root, and then playing those other notes again, right? So it's not really pentatonic right there. And to me, that's kind of the T-Bone Walker thing. Probably both him and T-Bone Walker also listened to Charlie Christian. And Charlie Christian was also somebody who would play along these lines. Right, so we've got this first lick. So, bending up. And as soon as I see that bend and I'm in B-flat, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be that pentatonic scale. Right, but it's not. Right, so he's bending up to the 5th, and then root, minor 7, 6, 5, 4, and then he slides into the 3rd from a half step below. Did I skip some notes? I think I might have skipped some notes, but you got it right there in the music. And then he does his Yngwie sweep. Nice called a rake. And then we've got this more what you would expect from him. So that rake, right? It's funny because we think about like Yngwie Malmsteen when I see things like that, but he's literally just playing up the chord. All right. Now, I would, as I normally do, I would say I would ignore that note right there. And the other thing I would do, because he's just kind of flailing on the guitar, that note and that note would also be not something I'd think about. And if you hit them, that would be okay. But for me, by editing those notes out, it makes it easier for me to be able to execute this stuff. And I probably end up playing that, while I'm doing it. So if I was to play the whole tune, let's see, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's kind of the whole thing. That last part, that's another great, bluesy guitar move. So I've got, on the 8th fret, I've got the 2nd and 3rd strings. And then I'm hammering on 6th fret bar, just like that, but hammering on to the major 3rd of that chord on the 3rd string. And then you typically end it on beat 1 of the next bar, which you can't see here, on the B flat, which is the root. All right. Anyway, okay, so let me take a break for a second. Anybody have any questions? And does this make sense why I'm pulling this apart this way? To me, I love deconstructing this stuff and analyzing it out. If I go back to, like, what backing track was I playing? Oh. So I had this backing track at the very beginning of one of my own. Next cycle. So I'll play some of this Chuck Berry over this. Very different groove. add other stuff in there. But you can kind of see that if I hadn't have like just spent a half an hour working with Johnny B. Good and I just played that, I don't necessarily know if you guys would go, oh, Chuck Berry necessarily. You think maybe more rock and roll or roots rock and roll. But there's an example of how I would take something like that and put it in a different context, and then it sounds like me. So, okay, I'll break it up for questions. Here's something I never do. I should do some slide, like beginning slide, because that's all I play is beginning slide. Okay. Anybody got any questions? Let me check. It's funny because my computer has the commentary, but it's not as fast as my iPad, believe it or not. I don't always see it come through. All right, so I'm gonna open the floor up to questions. That was kind of what I thought we would do today. And like most of these live streams, usually I've got a half hour of really good material. You can see my pedal board is back here in little pieces. I ran into the MIDI cable issue, which is that most MIDI cables are directional. Cool. Okay, Brian, good. Go ahead and ask some questions, guys. Let me, I like answering questions because it allows me to kind of explore the material a little bit differently too. So you're doing me a favor, not just yourself. In the meantime though, yeah, my pedal board is back there, so I'm kind of, I've discovered why so many people have the Strymon bridge where they float the big Strymon pedals up, because you need that clearance for the cables coming off the back. So now I've got to figure out, do I want to try and bend up a piece of metal, which I can get done. I can go to my father-in-law's shop, or do I want to reconsider how I'm doing this whole flat deck deal? We'll see. At some point there'll be a video for this. Carol. Okay, so I actually don't know Carol from heart, is the thing. I know just a few Chuck Berry tunes. So I remember, the main thing I remember about Carol is watching Chuck and Keith Richards get in a fight over how to play that one part at on the Chuck Berry movie. So if you guys are really into Chuck Berry, I'll learn a bunch of it. To me, it's like learning any of this stuff. Any of this stuff is good for me to kind of bear down on, because it gives me vocabulary. So I love this. This is one of the great things about teaching. So if you have like tunes that you want to examine, like this, I could do a Chuck Berry day and just go through all these things. All right. The Beatles versus Chuck versions. You know, it's always cool to me to examine tunes as they've been covered or as they've evolved, you know, from studio to live. I do a lot of, anyone who's studied with me, especially in person, not necessarily with Zoom, knows that like if we're working on a tune, a lot of times we'll check out the studio version, but then I like going on YouTube and kind of seeing all the different live versions and maybe other cover versions that might be available, just to get a sense of how people play. You also get a sense of what's really important in the tune. You hear things differently, especially live, because not so much with the earlier rock and roll, but with later music, you know, like take a Led Zeppelin song, for instance, where there might be like, you know, 9-10 tracks of guitar, but then they've got to play it live, and then how does that happen? Right, that kind of gets the, you know, gets the brain thinking about arrangements. Chuck is the building block. Chuck is any of that early stuff, that the Elvis stuff, you know, or even like Johnny Cash. To me, like, you can't really go wrong. You can't really go wrong learning all that early rock and roll stuff. You know, because what you're doing is you're learning the bridge between black and white music. You're learning, you know, basically a lot of this music was informed by the music that they heard on their own, whether it was gospel music, whether it was on the radio. Um, you know, it's basically a snapshot of the time, and you're also getting some of those recordings from the 50s. They were literally just, you know, guys in their garage kind of playing, and some of those recordings were actually really good studio recordings, like the Bill Haley stuff. What do you call it? Richie Valens' La Bamba. Like, I always thought that song was terrible when I was younger, and then a friend of mine, Tom Harkenreiter, sent me a recording, and it's on YouTube, and it's La Bamba without him singing and playing guitar on it, and it's awesome. And then I find out it's like one of the rhythm sections from like all the great Chicago blues recordings playing on this rock and roll tune. So there's a lot of really cool music there, and to me there's a lot to learn from, and a lot of my kind of fake country vocabulary comes starting from that point. Hank Marvin would be cool. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Yeah, to me it's important. You know, it's early rock and roll. There's always a place for early rock and roll. Live at the BBC Albums, I've got to check that out. This is one of the great things about teaching, is that you guys are really good about suggesting things that I need to go check out and get hip to. Yeah, Hendrix. I always end up revisiting Hendrix. You know, he'll do Johnny Be Good. Who does the Scorpions doing Hound Dog is pretty. It's actually more funny than useful. But you know, a lot of these bands would they cover these tunes and they revisit them, and they would do weird things with them. That would be kind of cool. So what you guys could do is in the comments, not in the chat comments, but in the comments under this video, because a lot of times I can't see the live stream comments. It's just this weird thing about this. But if there's like tunes that you think would be good for maybe an early rock and roll explorathon, post them in the video comments below the video, like the regular comments, and then I can see if I can put them together. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think, you know, so much of the early rock and roll really was, you know, Billboard had the charts, and you know, in the 40s, I forgot where this changed. It might have been in the 50s at some point. They called black music race music. You know, and you know, those charts went away eventually, but a lot of what is rock and roll was really what they were playing in the race music category. The more you listen to that, like the late 40s, post World War II into the early 50s, you kind of start to, there's like this more gradual melting from one era into the other, and from one demographic into the other. You know, to me, I had always like, hey, it's big bands and crooners like Frank Sinatra and Perry Como and guys like that. And then, you know, 1954 was like, suddenly then there's Chuck Berry and Elvis, and you know, and then there's rock and roll, just kind of like comes out full formed. And the reality was that music, it existed, you know, it existed for a long time. It just, that's about the time that it kind of hit the common consciousness. I don't know. It's interesting. You know, we live in an era where we can look back at all those times, but through the filter of time, we don't always know exactly everything that happened. It's funny. I'm watching The Crown with my wife and my daughter. We're kind of binge watching through it. In every era there's music, and the thing I noticed about The Crown was that as they were doing popular music, they weren't necessarily playing the most famous rock songs from those years, but they were playing the other songs on the radio. You kind of forget that for every hit from 1964 or 65 that we're familiar with, there are hundreds of other songs that were released, played on the radio, kids bought, maybe somebody liked, and they do a bit of that on the Crown, which is kind of the British perspective on rock and roll. But it's just also a big reminder that there's so much more music than what we're familiar with, and with that in mind, that also kind of informs me on how I look at how rock and roll has kind of evolved over time. I always had this thought that, like, if you started in the early 50s, you had where rock music was dangerous. It was scary for parents, right? You had black people playing it, with white America scared them, or you had white people playing it, which was even scarier, like Elvis, to parents. All right, and then at a certain point, after a few years, Elvis goes into the army, and a lot of that stuff isn't as popular. You get the kind of Philly doo-wop sound that happens, and rock and roll. There's a lot of you get surf music at the end of the 50s. You also get white artists like Pat Boone doing Little Richard tunes. So you get this thing where rock and roll gets safer. And then British invasion happens, right? So then you get Beatles, Rolling Stones, Kinks. You get a number of artists that once again scare the parents. And then, like all great things that generate income for the entertainment industry, it gets kind of not dumbed down, but watered down. You get Hermits, and you get a lot of stuff that's kind of safer and not as vital. In the 60s, these cycles happen a lot faster because of the way culture moves. You have the initial British invasion, 65, 66, 67, you start having the San Francisco sound. You have so much music happen, or California really, so quickly. You get the first 3 Led Zeppelin records within 18 months of each other. Most of the early Beatles and Rolling Stones, especially Rolling Stones, I think, were released as singles, not so much as long-playing records. Like the Rolling Stones, I think, had their contract basically said they had to produce an A side and a B side, like the front and back of a single, every 4 or 6 weeks, something like that. They're literally having to write tunes and come out with this stuff constantly, which is really good for the artist in some ways. I think it's even better for the fans. But then by mid-60s, a lot of those artists are putting out albums that are actually, Rubber Soul and Revolver are really good ideas, where the album itself is more important than the individual songs. The album is a volume of work, and I've always really loved that thing. But you get Hendrix, you get the beginning of the big festivals like Monterey Pop. You have a ton of artists come out, and then you also have Sha Na Na. So what is Sha Na Na? Sha Na Na is a revival of the 50s, and it's comedy. Yeah, right? So you're already looking back on rock and roll. It's not even 15 years old. The 70s, a lot of people die at age 27. You get the singer-songwriter thing and prog music happening at the same time. But then you also have recessions, Vietnam War. You have things that give rise to the birth of punk rock. A lot of the English music's also infused by music from the Caribbean. Also stuff from Africa, which I wasn't as aware of before. But you have the cycle, right? And the cycle really goes on into the early 2000s, then kind of peters out as music and the distribution of music becomes much more, I don't want to say corporate, but the internet basically does the cycle in. But you go through all these things. You get, punk rock, you get new wave, you get, heavy metal, like, Judas Priest, like new, the wave of British heavy metal. You get hair metal in California, cheese rock. Then you get Seattle Nirvana kind of stuff that turns into happy grunge, like Screaming Trees, and even the Replacements get put in there. And you got the Chicago sound, like Smashing Pumpkins. By the end of the 90s, you've got new metal. Screamo bands are starting to happen. You start getting the third wave of ska, punk rock ska, San Bernardino and San Diego ska music. Right, in each of these things, it cycles. And in the 21st century, as far as music is presented to people on the radio, that stops. But what you discover is that now, instead of having this cycle presented to you through mass media, everything's happening at the same time. So, like, literally, any kind of music you want's available. You just have to look for it out there. Like, it's really amazing. Like if you really search for good music, you will find good music anywhere. The idea that rock and roll is dead or that nobody makes good music, it's not true, unless you're just watching the American Music Awards or the Grammy Awards or the CMAs, right? So if you're really only ingesting your music through those channels, yeah, then you're getting homogenous crap, for the most part. If you're searching out new artists, if you're asking your friends what they listen to, if you're even letting Spotify or Apple Music suggest stuff for you, you're going to find there's a lot of good music out there. It's just a little harder to get to. All right, so I've been orating here. Live at the BBC. There's a lot of good BBC albums, but yeah, we find that. We'll talk about influences in a second. Ricky Nelson. Yeah, Buffalo Springfield. There's like this whole Los Angeles thing, like the Wrecking Crew era. Los Angeles. Have you guys seen that Echo in the Canyon? There's a thing. It was on Netflix, and it was a documentary about the bands that came out of Laurel Canyon, Mamas and the Papas, and things like that. And it's really interesting, actually. But it also gives you kind of this weird view of like how a lot of these people went to New York to play folk music, and then they came to California and ended up playing more of the 60s rock that we're familiar with. Alexis Corner. So Alexis Corner was he was English, right, Larry? Neil Young. Premier Music, PayPal, still work. Yes, actually. That, or if you actually, if you look in the upper left corner here, you can do the PayPal through there, or Venmo, or any of those things. Thank you, Jeremy. No new metal is good new metal. Ricky Martin. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, this is a very, chauvinistically American and English way of looking at popular music, because the reality is that Latin music is even like Korean music, Japanese, all of these has music and their own take on popular music. I'm just kind of going through the stuff that I'm familiar with. Old Grey Whistlers. Yeah, a lot of there's so much good music on TV. What was there's Old Grey. There was a show. It was a guy's name, and he did a lot of rock shows. Alexis Corner. So I've got Here's the thing. This conversation is making me think, hey, I've got some stuff that I need to go check out too. This is part of what gets lost, I think, in modern life, is we don't have these conversations about music like this as much. Yeah, Earth, Wind, and Fire. As you guys know, I'm really into funk and soul music. All right, so there's a whole parallel pathway of that kind of music. Man, I feel like I'm leaving all kinds of stuff out. Jules Holland. Yeah, that was actually what was the name of that show? There was a lot of good stuff on the Jules Holland show. It was just, I don't know. Don Kirshner's Rock Concert. That is what it was. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. The funny thing was, it's actually kind of sad, but before this, I have some hand issues, so I soak my hands in paraffin wax. I've got a wax bath for them. And I was doing it about an hour ago, and I usually watch YouTube on my iPad when I was doing it. And one of the things that came up was Van Halen live at the US Festival. And so much of the earlier Van Halen stuff has come out. We have this wealth, this absolute bonanza of live music that we didn't have available to us before. Sometimes it's literally just a bootleg, like audio with some pictures on it. But sometimes you get these great concerts, and some of them come from those TV shows. Or even like I had to learn "Tempted" by Squeeze last year. All right, and it's one of those songs that it's keyboard heavy and not very guitar heavy, and I had to figure out how to make it work for a no keyboard, only guitar trio. And I did some searching on YouTube, and there was a great version of it, and I think it was from, I don't know if it was from David Letterman or it was from the Jules Holland show, but it was like the band augmented with some other people. It actually might have been from Jules Holland, because I think Hiram Bullock was playing guitar and David Sanborn was playing saxophone. But being able to see how they made that work, in a more guitar heavy way was really helpful. But it was cool because there was like big solos on it. It was fun. It's just a different arrangement. So I got to see an artist play a song I'm super familiar with because I've heard it for 40 years of my life. How they did it live when they were in their prime, but they had different band members. Soul Train, yeah. Yeah, and I'm as guilty as anyone else of not searching out new music. That's just. So, I'm thinking as I'm doing this, I'm as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking, what would you guys think about a lesson where we discuss how to make piano songs into workable rock guitar tunes, or any tune that's not a guitar tune into a workable like rock thing, like that that song "Tempted." There's a lot to it. It'd be kind of fun to go through. I haven't done it in a while, but that's always like one of the challenges for me, is because I never play in full bands. I always play in trios or in smaller groups, so I have to cover a lot more ground. And sometimes it's about rocking the tunes up, and other times it's about really just trying to like figure out how to make chords work in a rock contest that are a little bit more sophisticated and don't really they don't really work so great with overdrive or distortions. Okay, so this is another one of those things. If you guys have song suggestions for something like that, by all means, put it in the comments down below. I won't be able to see it if you put it in the chat, but if you write it in the comments below the video, that will actually stay. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Here's the live. This is another one of those things. If you guys have, yeah, you can write comments down below, and if you do that, then I actually have that to refer back to, and then I can kind of plan some lessons around that. So, some of the stuff, like when we talked about just the basic triad lessons, the video lessons I did earlier in the year, and being able to basically voice those with the other notes that make up a piano part. Or even like, there's a song from my Felt album called "Killing Time." No comment section there. Well, maybe when it's done. If you okay. when it's finished, scroll down because there'll be comments at least then. I don't know, maybe if you're watching on your iPad. Actually, it looks like if you're watching on it, because my iPad doesn't have comments either, but my web browser has it. Try putting it in here, but I don't know. Sometimes I can't get the chat. But even like taking something like this song, the basic chorus of the song is just 2 chords. I woke up when you fell down. Signs of life are underground. Is this where it all begins to fall apart? Right now, here's the thing: is that I can get away with that, just that much of it, right? And it's all distorted. It's like, you know, I woke up when you found signs of life are underground. Is this where it all begins? Where all roads out lead right back in. 1,000 words for me today, and all I could think to say is, how could she leave me in pieces when I can't find my own? I can't find my own. Mine. Okay, rhythm's all screwed up, but basically what happened there was what I would do if I was playing piano was I'm playing the D chord and then the E chord, and then I'm playing the inversion of the D chord. So and I wrote the bass part this way. So I've got the F sharp, so D over F sharp, first inversion like we talked about in the lessons. And then here's the E chord there, inverted. So I've got root position D, root position E, first position D, first position E, our inversion, second inversion D with the 5th of the bass, second inversion E, and then root position D, root position E, root position D, second inversion E, second inversion D, first inversion E, first inversion D, root position, root position. And what happens is I get this bass line. It doesn't sound like 2 chords, but because I'm using only chord tones in the bass line, I'm actually able to keep the harmony the same. And it's tricks like that that really help me be able to make tunes work. You know, what's that? Let's see, Joe Jackson. Is she really going out with him? Is she really gonna make him home tonight? Is she really going out with him? Right, it's a Joe Jackson song. It's E. Alright, and then you've got this F to B flat, and that doesn't work so well as playing this version of the chord. You've got the E flat chord, and then you've got basically that's an E flat with an F in the bass, which is actually an F suspended chord. All right, and then that allows me to also play the melody over the top of it, right, while the bass player is doing the bass line. There are all kinds of tricks like that that we can kind of talk about when it comes to fleshing out tunes that aren't necessarily only guitar tunes. So that's why, like, if you make those suggestions, cool. Steve made the comment, I don't think the comment section comes on until after it's not live anymore. That might be true. You might have to wait until after we're done here. So, how are you guys doing? Let me pause for questions. I've kind of like BS through a bunch of stuff today. But cheers. What I'm also hoping is, as I tend to go through, like when I'm explaining stuff like this, I'll go through it kind of quickly, but I want you guys used to the idea that a lot of the concepts that we talk about in these lessons are building blocks, or they're fundamentals that you should always have available to you once you learn them. The chord inversions lesson, you know, where we're basically taking each of the inversions, root position, first inversion, second inversion, kind of working them through. And then the next lesson after that, where we took those and turned them into, minor and diminished and augmented chords. That stuff it's important. You really need to know that stuff, right? So when you run into something like that in one of these live streams, it doesn't hurt to go back and review it if you're not really able to grasp it very quickly. That's just kind of my thought for the day on that. I haven't played this guitar in a while. I've been playing my McFeely, and then I put those Diodario strings on the Paul Reed Smith, and this felt more Chuck Berry than either of those two guitars. I probably should have brought my Les Paul out, but I wanted to play this one, and I'm kind of remembering why I like this guitar so much. It's just a really good sounding guitar. Okay, so question. On those little bends on Johnny Be Good, the bends are quick and straight into pitch to stay in time, right? Yeah, so this goes back to like conversations we've had about bending, where your bending needs to be conceptualized as just an articulation of the melody. So sometimes, right, that's a pretty quick bend that's going directly to pitch. Sometimes you want to go slower and it will be notated differently, but you always listen to stuff and make sure that how you're playing it is how it's played on the original recording. Like we did the Hendrix stuff. All of those bends are pretty quick, right? But then, right, that one you hit it and then bring it up. Right, that's in rhythm, that's in time. Right, all of those have to be in time, and the curvature of the bend, or the contour of the bend, has to be right for it to be melodically correct. Right, so sometimes it's like straight up and down. Right, that's pretty direct. Let me think of something that's like a serious. Right, all of those have different amounts of time that you would articulate them or play them on. Does that help? I feel like I kind of over explain, but the reality is that you don't want to think about the bends as quick or slow as much as how are they in time? Like what is actually the timing on this? All right. To me, bending it's a big part of your voice on the instrument. All of that stuff, right, right, that's a two-step bend right there, right? You gotta dig into it, but that's a sound, man. That's to me, that's important. Okay, if you can count well, then you can figure that out, which type of bend. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a circular argument, I guess, maybe, that I'm making. But you can also just listen to it and listen to the contour of the bend, I mean, does it go straight up or does it take a while to get there? It's as simple as that too. But, to me, you should be able to count it and you should be able to articulate it like a melody. You guys ever watch the Tom Bukovac channel? One of my favorite things, all he does is he does these videos and he puts them up and he talks about stuff, and he's this great session player. He knows everything there is to know about guitars as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of times he starts them off with these really cool looping jams, and he just gets so much music and sound, and he's playing like cool guitars and cool amps and stuff, but I think a lot of times he's just playing through like a Roland Cube or something. So he'll play like a 59 Les Paul through the Roland Cube, and it really doesn't matter. You know, he's got a couple pedals, but like if you want to hear someone make really cool music by himself in his garage, literally, this is my garage. His garage literally is a garage with like ladders, and it's full of vintage Marshalls and stuff, but it's also got like his kids' riding toys in the background and stuff. And it's you know, I don't watch it every day anymore, but like sometimes he's got bits where he's doing sessions because he lives in Nashville. And usually he's just talking. It was kind of his way to get through the quarantine, like most of us have had to do. And he makes such great music at the beginning of each of these. Like, it's really cool to see. And like sometimes he'll go through and he'll explain how the loops work and like the kind of chords that he's playing. But what I'm talking about, like with the chord inversions and all this kind of stuff, he's such a master at that stuff. It's great. You know, he can play all kinds of styles. He's really good. That's Tom Bukovac. How you want to voice something you want to play or create. You're talking about like when I do that, or like how a person could go about doing that? I'll put a link to Tom Bukovac's channel because he is awesome. Give me just a second and I'll he doesn't have like the normal like guitar guy channel. It's refreshing. He's not doing the pedal demos, and you know, he's not one of those guys that like, you know, the second the new Helix comes out, he's got a demo of it like with everybody else. I'll find one of these. Hang on a second. Where's the one? So, let's see. It's gotta be a better one.
Hello, class.
All right, I'll give you this one. I don't know what this one is, but go check out his channel. Just a continuation of my life, if you can count. Yeah, I'm not entirely certain I'm understanding the question. You kind of find that like as you work on all of these skills and as you learn all of this music, you kind of you develop an aesthetic that informs what you play, and all of the mechanics are there. They're the substrate that supports this, but you don't really think about it. You know, if I'm writing music or if I'm trying to be creative with something, I have all of those skills underneath what I'm able to do, but I don't really think about it too much. All right, with this, I'm like, hey, it's E minor. Let's see what happens if I can, you know, use some open strings and then just have one voice moving down against it. Yeah. So, and I'm basically feeling a rhythm. It's almost like that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So things that we've talked about, I can kind of feel my way through them. I know what they feel like. All right, and I can use that there. To me, you know, nothing is useful to you as a player until you've internalized to the point where you don't have to think about it. It just kind of exists in your consciousness. Like, I think maybe that's kind of the place that you want to head to. I don't know. I still feel like I'm missing the. Yeah, I'm kind of overshooting what you're asking. If you can count and know what you want, you can decide how to time. Exactly. Yeah, but that's part of it. That's your overall skill set. Because at a certain point, all this crap, for lack of a better word, beat you up over in terms of being able to play in time and in tune and understanding the harmony. All of that is basically, it's there to be internalized and then forgotten about, so you can, you know, when I hear somebody playing a rhythm guitar part, you know, right, that's not hard for me to learn rhythmically because I've got that skill set where I'm feeling every subdivision, right? So I can kind of feel within a few bars of it how to play that, how to make it work. Okay, so looks like I got about 10 of you guys on. Does anybody have any questions? I'll kind of open up the floor to other things. I've been in this weird mode. I complain every week about not being able to play shows, and then I've been listening to a lot of music. It's kind of funny, like, you know, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, which means naturally that the Taylor Swift album, the new one, is being in rotation in my house, and so is the last one. My wife listens to that stuff too. And if you're not familiar with that album, it's a lot of acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. She's not dancing or singing about, you know, hey boy, are you gonna go to the dance with me, or that kind of stuff. But it kind of reminded me of the fact that I love to make music. I love to write music. I love being a creative person. You know, and I'm starting to kind of get into this mode where maybe there might be a new album being written. It's strange to say that part of the inspiration came from Taylor Swift, but it's more about the fact that, like, you know, I'm not having to spend time cramming cover tunes, and I'm in this notch right now where, you know, the conservatory semester is over for me, so I'm not writing lesson plans, and I have a little bit more free time. And I also basically have my studio set up where I can do anything I want to here. So I have a little bit of freedom that way too. So this conversation, you know, kind of feeds into that. All right. Hey, if you guys could do me a favor, someone just hit the thumbs up. If you haven't hit the thumbs up on this, do me a favor and hit that. That helps me with the algorithm. If you're enjoying what we're doing here, I will say that. If you're not enjoying it, don't bother. But give me a thumbs up, because that actually helps me with whether or not people see this stuff. Tay-Tay. Billie Eilish. Yeah, we hear a lot of Billie Eilish in this house too. Shade. I think that's how you say it. I feel like such an old person. You know, I turned 50 this year, and on the inside, I still feel like a 6. But then, you know, like talking to my students or like my kids about music or other things, suddenly I start feeling 50. You know. So, play out. Man, what should I play? Yeah, I should go inside and actually spend some family time. My voice is pretty not warmed up, but let's do some Taj Mahal. If you guys have questions, put them in there. I'll answer them before the end. Now she caught the Katy, she left me a mule to ride. Now she caught the Katy, she left me a mule to ride. Now she caught the Katy, left me a mule to ride. That train pulled out and I swung on behind. I'm crazy about her, that hard-headed woman of mine. Now, ma'am, my baby's gone Good God Almighty, that girl, she's tall. Man, my baby's long. Good God Almighty, that girl, she's tall. That girl, she's long. You know she's tall. She sleeps with her head in the kitchen now and her feet out in the hall. I'm crazy about her, that hard-headed woman of mine. And I love my baby, she's so fine. You know I'd love to see her sometime. She don't care about me. She don't know. She don't care about what the state I'm in. Now, she caught the Katie. She left me a mule to ride. She caught the Katie. She left me a mule to ride. Now she caught the Katie, left me a mule to ride. The train pulled up and I got on behind. I'm crazy about her, that hard-headed woman, that hard-headed woman of mine. All right. I should actually sing more often because I need to get my voice back in shape. Blues turnarounds in the style of Robert Johnson. That would be fun to work on. I'm actually going to post some links here because I actually have turnarounds that are in that universe here in the keys of E and A. That would probably get you rolling. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is... Shush! So here are 10 turnarounds in the key of E. Oops. And then here are 7 turnarounds in the key of A. And hopefully these will kind of get you rolling. That's actually a lot of what you would learn in those kinds of things. All right. Any other questions? Yes, no? No, yes? Okay. In that case, I thank you all for hanging out with me tonight. I appreciate it. Remember, we're back on Saturday mornings. I'm going to ask people if it's better that I do the Saturday morning lesson at 8:30 a.m. California time or if I do it at noon California time. It's a bit easier for me to justify doing a Saturday lesson early, but I also don't know if it's too early for most folks. So kind of depends. So, but I'm just kind of curious, see if we get a little bit more participation if I go later. So let me know. And if you have any questions, let me know. Post them in the... Remember, post songs and lesson ideas in the comments below as soon as this is done. And you can also do it on the... Well, almost all of you guys are on the forum, so you can also do it in the forum thread on this as well. So thanks a lot, gentlemen. Have a good night. And ladies.